You've seen like a million of them, right? The I love Canadian oil and gas bumper stickers, the hoodies, everybody professing their love for what we say to the world is ethical oil. So when Calgary hosts the World Petroleum Congress and Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith warmly greets the Saudi delegation on the tarmac posing for photos, whatever happened to all that ethical oil stuff? Does the argument evaporate? Max Fawcett and I get into it.
For years, Albertans in the oil and gas industry, Danielle Smith herself, have talked a really tough game about Saudi Arabia, what a terrible country it is, human rights abuses, all things that are 100% true. And yet, when they got a chance to say that to the face of one of the princes in the royal family and the country's energy minister, they bent the knee, they kissed the ring. And the reason they did that is because the Saudis share the same, I would call it delusion, but the same view as the UCP and Danielle Smith, which is that demand for oil will continue to rise out till 2050. It's not going down. It's going to keep going up, and we need to be producing as much as possible. So, this is an alliance of convenience. This is an alliance of mutual deception, but it doesn't serve Alberta well. I think when you're in the middle of one of these transitions, it's difficult to see where things are going. You're sort of at the top of the roller coaster, and the momentum is switching gears. Maybe it's 2031, maybe it's 2032, but I know, from a business perspective, you don't build your business plan around the most optimistic scenario you can find. You stress test your business for the most pessimistic one you can find. You make sure that it is prepared for all eventualities. And then if the optimistic scenario unfolds, well, good for you. You've made more money in the end. And that would be the prudent thing for us to be doing as a province that still derives so much of our revenues, our provincial revenues, from the oil and gas industry. We should be preparing for the downside.
It's a remarkable photo of the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, on the tarmac in Calgary. This is on Monday. Extending a warm welcome to Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman Al Saud, right, from Saudi Arabia. And she talks about how she is delighted to welcome him. And you're absolutely right, Max. Like, the Premier is on the record before she was the Premier, right? But she is on the record with throwing zingers, like hand grenades, verbally at the Saudis. The whole Ezra Levant school of thought and ethical oil, and it's what everybody talks about, and how Irving Oil needs to stop importing from the Saudis, and we need to use only Canadian oil, which, hilariously kind of resembles a national energy program in a way. But you and I have talked about that at length in past. But honestly, what's the Premier supposed to do? We don't expect her to turn her back to the Saudis at the World Petroleum Congress. We don't expect her to try to go up one side and down the other of the Saudis, because the power dynamic there is laughable. No disrespect to Alberta, right? Do you agree on all these fronts? What's she supposed to do?
I definitely think that she should have greeted her delegates with respect and attention. As a good host, you roll out the red carpet for everyone. I think that the degree to which she fawned over the Saudis and then echoed their messaging about global oil demand and the way that they see the world was over the top. But it speaks to the fact that all this ethical oil stuff, it's just talk, right? It's just a marketing, branding exercise. When it comes right down to it, if the choice is between supporting the federal government and Canada and owning the libs, people like Danielle Smith will always choose to own the libs. That is their top priority. And you see talk about, her being in a crowd of oil and gas people. I think of it sort of a bit like professional wrestling. She went for the cheap heat, right? She took the easy way out in that room. There was a speech she could have given that acknowledged the concerns of that room, that acknowledged their interests and their backgrounds, but also respected the theme of the actual Congress, which is energy transition, which is net zero. Talk about the ways in which Alberta is going to get there. Talk about the ways in which they can work with the federal government. I don't think if you're in the oil and gas industry in Alberta, you want to see the federal government and the government of Alberta squabbling in public like that.
If gas stations had two pumps and one of them was oil, like gas, just gas, sort of, where it's from, whatever, it's offered at the most competitive price. And then we had Canadian gas, Canadian fuel, and there was like Canada flag on the pumps and everything. And you can give me a better informed guess of what you think the price might be per liter. Let's say it's 15 cents a liter more. Let's say it's like 18 cents a liter more. Which pump do you think that most people would go to?
I think the first couple of times they might try out the Canadian pump. Especially if people are watching, they probably take some cool selfies in front of the Canadian pump and then put it on their Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And then when the novelty wore off, they would purchase whatever was cheapest because that's how we're wired and that's how we operate. And there is no difference between Canadian derived gasoline and American derived gasoline. It all comes from the same molecules and it all does the same thing in your car. It's not like two different brands of peanut butter or something where there's a flavor difference or there's a difference in nutritional content. So, I've heard this argument for as long as I've been covering oil and gas that, we should find a way to pay a premium for Canadian oil. And it's fungible. It doesn't work that way. It is exactly the same as other forms of oil. And so that whole argument just sort of falls apart upon even the slightest application of pressure.